So I thought it'd be fun to take a little break from the ongoing plane series, or whatever I'm calling it now. It's a little less serious, a little more fun, and just kind of out there, where I take pretty much all the planes I mentioned in part 2, which I'll try to throw a card up here, and make a tier list, just throw them up there. I'm not basing this on anything other than just do I like the plane or not. But I tried to include everything I could think of from the 4th and 5th gen, and even found a couple I wasn't familiar with, which we'll find out in a minute. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. I think, the F-22 is probably a good place to start. It's one of the more recognizable options, and out of just pure my likeness of it, I guess, I actually, I think it's an A. I think it is cool. It is like super advanced or whatever, but it's not got that thing that's like, okay, that's like one that I think about more often than not. So we'll put it in A tier. It's a lot of fan favorite, so I can't like put it further down, but I agree with most people. It's a really cool aircraft. Then you have the F-15 in any kind of its varieties, because generally they're shape-wise kind of the same, and they have different capabilities and such. But just out of my likeness, I'm gonna kind of throw it in A too. It's, well, you know what? I take that back. I'm gonna put it in B. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it in B. It's cool. It has a lot going for it, but it's just not one, once again, that really gets my goat. It's not something that I'm like, hey, that's really cool, I'm going to talk about, even though no one wants to listen to me talk about this very obscure jet. Yeah, F-15. The Eurofighter Typhoon, it's cool as well. I don't really care. Like, I don't know. The Eurofighter goes back and forth. It's not like a love-hate thing. It's more of just to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's kind of neat. I'm not a huge fan of Delta Wings. In some instances, I do think they look cool, which is kind of the biggest factor I'm going off of here. But generally, I just don't like them as much in terms of just the aircraft that use them. I'd say, though, out of the Delta Wings, it's going to be a B. It's one of the ones I like better than most others, and we'll kind of see that here a little later on. But I think the Typhoon is pretty cool. It's very advanced as well. A lot of countries use it. I do like the canards are kind of downward angled to help its stability. But yeah, it is a weird looking aircraft, but I think it is a neat looking one at the very least. The JS-39 Gripen, also kind of a fan favorite. I'm going to put this in B as well. I think it is cool looking. I think out of the Delta Wings, it is pretty high up there. Now that I'm looking at it, oh no, because it's down here. Never mind. Yeah, the Gripen. I like the canards. They make a little bit more sense. Like the design. It's got a lot of interesting capabilities. And I think more consistently, hold on, I'm going to just do this. I like the Gripen over the Eurofighter more often than not. Just out of, like I said, me liking it. Just like, hey, yeah, that's kind of a cool aircraft. So, Eurofighter's not bad, but I think the Gripen is one of my favorites. We have the Yak-30 here. I don't know a lot about the Yak-30. It's a light fighter trainer aircraft. I do like that it looks like the tail fins here are downward angled, kind of like the F-4. I think it's a cool looking design. I like that it's got the little vents here, which I think they're either similar to the MiG-29 FOD protecting vents, or that's just for flares or something. I can't remember. You can't really see it great in this picture, but it's there. It's okay. I don't know if I really want to put this in D, because I just don't know a ton about it, to be honest. I think out of the light fighters, it is kind of cool looking, so we'll leave it there. The Su-57. Now, any Russian aircraft here, I'm not associating it with Russia. Like, it's just the aircraft itself. Not, like I said, it's just, do I like the look of it? Do I think it's a neat looking aircraft? And the Su-57 is pretty cool looking. It is a unique design. It's really big and weird looking, but it's also like very futuristic looking at the same time. It's definitely not as sleek as like the F-22 or F-35, but it is still a cool looking aircraft. I'm gonna put it behind the Eurofighter. It's got a couple of cool features, but I've never just like been like, yeah, the Su-57 is just such a cool looking aircraft. It's neat, but it's not, I don't know, the visuals of it aren't exactly selling me all the time. Then you have the F-16. I did put, yeah, I've got the Sufa here as a different option just because its airframe is a little different. But the F-16, like C to E variant with those conformal fuel tanks, I think this is a classic. I think it's a very cool looking aircraft. I do go back and forth on the look of the intake on the bottom, looking kind of like a dumb mouth, but it's there. I would say I probably would go above the Typhoon. I think more consistently I like the look of the F-16. I think it is like more angular, almost kind of like a shark in a weird way. I don't know why I get shark vibes. I guess Viper kind of makes sense in that instance. But yeah, it's a classic design. As much as I kind of go back and forth on the intake, I think overall it's still a very cool looking aircraft. You have the MiG-29. I think this has gone up quite a bit in my personal kind of accounting of aircraft, I guess. Largely due to some of the paint schemes that the Ukrainians use. I think they're really cool looking. Like the black and gray digital camo, I think it works really well. Unfortunately, not the one I've got pictured here. I'm going to put this... Yeah, I'll put it right behind the F-16. I think it's a very fitting spot. It's a cool looking aircraft. It's one of the few I've messed around with in DCS and done a very poor job of flying. But it's cool. I mean, it takes some of the neat features the Su-57 has with kind of the elongated leading edge and producing a little bit more lift with the body here. I like the big intakes on the bottom feeding into the fairly large looking engines that are fairly well defined against the airframe. It's overall, pretty cool looking. It's not necessarily my favorite. I think more consistently I like the F-16, the Gripen, the F-15, and the F-22, but I think it is a neat looking airframe. For an airframe that doesn't exist, I'm going to go ahead and just put this in S because the idea of the F-2 Super Kai is awesome. I love the F-2. For some unrational reason I can't explain. I just like, it's an F-16 but different, and I just love the different. Right, it's got the conformal fuel tanks. Of course there's a lot of other upgrades, and it never existed. This is actually a picture from Ace Combat because no physical real example exists because the Japanese just decided to move to F-35 instead of updating their F-2s. But yeah, I mean, it takes the larger I guess I wouldn't say more navally focused, but the just kind of larger, lighter-ish F2, and just kind of upgrades it to like the F-16E equivalent. And I just like the paint scheme. I like the design. It still has a lot of the things I kind of dislike about the F-16, with the big dumb gaping mouth bottom intake thingy. But I do like that it's a little bit bigger. I think it feels a little more imposing, and I think that matches more with the conformal fuel tanks. They don't look quite as big. They're still pretty big, but still. The Su-57, or Su-27, not 57, I already did 57. Actually, I'm going to put this right above the 57. I do like the design. I think, once again, the Ukrainian digital camo looks really good here. I do like the kind of unfinished or unpainted engines there. I think that's a really cool look. I do feel like it looks a little bit like, a bird, obviously, because, it's a plane. But it does have, like, a really long nose section, and it just kind of looks like a stork. And that is not, like... I think the MiG-29 works a little bit better in terms of its, like, proportion. But, yeah, the yeah, I'll leave, hold on, I'm going to do that. There we go. The Su-27 is cool to an extent, but I do think it kind of looks goofy with the way the little nose sticks out really far. The Mirage 2000. I'm going to put this in C. I understand that some people like the Mirage, but once again, kind of the big delta wing, it's okay. I think some aircraft do it better than others, but this is just not one I care for all that much. It doesn't really do anything for me, so. Speaking of another aircraft that does very little for me, the Harrier. I'm going to actually, I'm going to put the Harrier at the top of C. I think it is, there we go. It is a weird, goofy-looking design, which is kind of out of necessity, obviously, because, it's a VTOL aircraft, one of the first prominently used ones. So it's designed more around its functionality than its looks, and it's very obvious. It still is, from like a mechanical standpoint, an interesting aircraft, being, VTOL. But it is just a strange-looking aircraft as well. It's just not something I particularly care for. The Super Hornet Block 3. I'd put the Super Hornet Block 3, you know what, I'm actually going to put it at the top of B. I really like the Block 3 and just regular Super Hornet by extension. I do think the conformal fuel tanks work a little better on the Block 3 than they do on like the F-16Es or the Super Kai, even though I love the Super Kai. It's a cool design. It's not like my favorite, obviously, but it is pretty cool looking. It's unique by comparison to like the Legacy Hornets, even though I kind of like the Legacy Hornet more. But I think as far as I can upgrade it, it makes more sense visually speaking, for me at least. Then we have the Legacy Hornet, which I'm actually going to put in A. Maybe this is irrational, maybe this is stupid. I love the Legacy Hornet. I think it is like dumb but also cool looking at the same time. It's very blocky towards the end, which is not ideal. It doesn't look great. I don't think it's a bad thing, it's just kind of what it is. But the leading edge is being really narrow and having those slits in there to kind of help vent air as it's taking off or landing. It's actually really cool. I actually really like the design. I think the forward section of the Legacy Hornet looks better than the Super Hornet personally, but that's just kind of me. Then we have the T-50. I'm going to actually put that down there. This is, I've got the FA-50 as well. This is like a light trainer aircraft, I think is the... this might be the South Korean trainer, I think. I'm not as up on light fighter trainer aircraft, so kind of keep this in mind. I don't think it looks as cool as the Yak 130, but I think it is still pretty interesting looking. But probably out of the... You know what? Hold on. I'm going to move the Harrier down. Out of these, I don't think it's as interesting as most other stuff. Gotta put the F-111 up, or F-117 up there. Kind of like, the more you look at it, just from a shape standpoint, it just kind of looks stupid, but it is also really cool. Being one of the first stealth aircraft is really neat. I like kind of the venting here for the intakes. I think that's actually it's almost kind of reminiscent of Gundam stuff for me. So that kind of is a big play. The angled tail fins up here being kind of originating from the same point versus, two separate points. I don't know if I like that look as much. I've seen other, design takes on the F-117, and I think they look better. But I don't think it's that bad. It's just a really weird but cool looking, I guess more of a strike craft, but still, it's very unique, in my opinion. We have the F-16 Isufa, so it takes the same conformal fuel tanks, but adds a bigger spine, almost kind of like a MiG-21 BIS type situation. It's okay. I don't like it as much as the F-16. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to put it down here. And this is one of the problems that I might talk about in a different video, but the F-16 being small and light is kind of one of its biggest selling points. And the more you just start stapling shit on top of it, the less it is that. So, sure, the conformal fuel tanks here are fine, I guess. That does kind of help solve one of the minor, I'd say, issues of the F-16 having limited range. But I guess if you're really flying just a lot of F-16s and you don't want a dedicated electronic warfare aircraft, you could kind of do something like this. it's fine, I guess. I've seen some E's with the spine as well. I don't know if they're mislabeled E's or not. I kind of assumed this was like a indigenous Israeli thing, but I guess not. I guess IAI does do work other places, but still. I don't like as much as the regular F-16. I do think it starts looking like a kind of a Frankenstein aircraft. Definitely not my favorite out of those designs. You have the F-35. I've gone back and forth on the F-35 a lot. I don't know that I like it as much, visually speaking, as a lot of other things. I do think I'm probably going to put it above the Su-57. No, I'll put it, actually no. I'll leave it under the Eurofighter. It's a fine place. It's okay looking. It's not as kind of cool, in my opinion, as the F-22 or the F-117 as far as stealth aircraft go. But, it's prolific. It's out there. It's like the F-16 of the stealth age, I guess. It's okay. The F-2, though, I love the F-2. I'm going to actually put the F-2 above the Super Kai. Like I said, I irrationally love the F-2 for some reason. I don't get why. It's just a bigger, slightly different F-16, but that design, even with the big dumb mouth intake at the bottom, is cool. I love it. This one is really hard to read. This is the indigenous Taiwanese aircraft that's like a weird mix of F-18 and F-16. It's double-engined, but it looks like an F-16 from the top for the most part. It is weird to look at by comparison, but I actually really like it. It's like, just go look at like Taiwanese fighter craft, and I'm sure you'll find it. I think I can't remember the first part of the designation, but I think it's F-CK-1. It's just a weird mishmash, and they run a lot of F-16s, so this might be like kind of the predecessor in their forces for them. The HAL Tejas Mark 1, I feel about it kind of about as much as I feel the Mirage 2000. I don't really care for it. The J-20 is kind of along the same lines. I don't really like how this is designed. I feel like it's too big. I feel like it's a weird, long box. It's alright, but it just, visually speaking, is not something that appeals to me. The J-11's kind of right there with the Su-27 because it's kind of the same thing. The JH-7, this has a lot of calls to, like, the later third generation stuff. And this is kind of similar to the Tornado visually for me. I think it's kind of the shape of the intakes and kind of how the spine works with just a smaller tail section. It's alright. I think I do like it slightly more than those. Maybe I'll put it above the Harrier. The FA-50, which is, I think, a slightly different version of the T-50, or maybe it's a different countries, I can't remember. I think for this like light fighter role, it does look a little sleeker for me. It looks like proportionally like it makes more sense. Let's leave it there. I think the Yak 130 still looks cooler, but that's just me. The KF-21, which is kind of like a weird... It's the South Korean 5th generation fighter project they're working on. It's more like a 4.5 because the airframe is stealthy, but it doesn't have any internal weapons bays. Which is one of the cool things about the F-22 and F-35. And then I guess by extension, the Su-57 and J-20. Where do I put this? You know what? I'm going to put it above... Yeah, I'll put it above the F-15. I still think I like the Block 3 more. It looks fine. It's like I said, it looks very much like an F-22, just with pylons. It's alright. We have the Su-34. I really like it. As much as I kind of had the complaint about the weird long stork neck thingy on the Su-27, the Su-34 just makes it worse because it makes it wider so it looks like a duck. I kind of like that. Like, good on you guys for just not caring and going with this very strange design of the airframes you have, but it's just not a big thing for me. I think, do I like it? No, I don't like it as much as... Now this might be the only one I put in the D tier. I just don't like... I get that they have the airframes, and that's kind of what they had to use, but still, I just do not like... The double seating thing is already kind of strange, and there's not a lot of aircraft I feel like pull it off well, but this one's not one for me. The Vigorous Dragon's another one I take back. I'm going to put in D. Largely, I think some of the newer variants have fixed this, but the way the intake is matched to the body was just a bunch of weird small pylons, and it looked super jank. And I don't like the delta wing on this as much either. I think it's just a less cool looking Eurofighter, and takes a lot of the cool stuff the Eurofighter did and just got rid of it. So, you know, maybe it... well, I'll take that back. I'll put it above the JH7. I know it's a big jump. I still don't like the delta wing as much, but the canards, I think, help a little bit. It does... I mean, kind of the dragon thing, it looks kind of like a dragon neck where it's like rising up. I still... The newer variants, like I said, have fixed how the intakes affixed to the bottom of the hull, but it's still there. And it doesn't... It's kind of the same F-16 issue I have, where the intake on the bottom looks like a big dumb mouth. MiG-35, it's kind of the same as the MiG-27. Or MiG-29. Ugh, getting everything mixed up. It doesn't have the cool flaps here. I just like the vents. You know what? I like the vents more. It's a neat looking design, very kind of Gundam-esque, like I said, of the F-117. The JF-17, where am I going to put? I'm going to put the JF-17 above the J-11. No, I take that back. I'm going to put it up here. It is kind of what I like. It fixes the problem I have with the F-16 with the big dumb intake for the mouth. By moving them to the side, it makes it less of a tall-looking aircraft. It still doesn't do a lot of other things outside of that, but it is. It's still kind of neat. You know, it's kind of one of those strange takes on the single-engine configuration, but it does its own cool thing, I think. The Panvia Tornado. A lot of Europeans are not gonna like me for this. I'm not a huge fan of the Tornado, as you probably guessed when we comparing it to this. It doesn't, I don't know. Like, with the F-14 having the cool swept wing thing, this just doesn't do... None of the other aircraft that have the variable swept wing thing, except for maybe, like, the F-117, do it in a way I find interesting, visually speaking. I just do not... I'm trying to think of where do I put the Tornado. I'll put it above the J-11. It's still a C-tier plane for me. I get that, you know, that it's a big European thing. It's kind of the predecessor to the Eurofighter, but it's not something I really like the design of too much, and I think the big tail fin doesn't help that. I know it's there for a reason, but I think it just proportionally doesn't look quite right to me. The J-16 is... Where am I put the J-16? I'll put the J-16 under the J-11. I think it just makes the problem I have with like the big stork nose on the Su-27 airframe worse, because it like makes a bigger hump here, and that just looks weird to me. The rest of the airframe's kind of the same, just that, and I think it exaggerates that like weird arc going into the nose. You have the Dassault Rafale, which is a very cool looking aircraft. I think I like it more than the Eurofighter, consistently at least, but I also find, I don't know, when I do like the Eurofighter, I think it looks more interesting than the Dassault Rafale, but I think that interestingness is also the thing that like keeps pushing me off of the Eurofighter, because like, if I want just a regular looking aircraft, I think the Dassault Rafale is good for that, but I do think that it is a little more base, more consistent, I guess, with other aircraft, which is why I feel like I'm more consistently versus the Typhoon. Like, oh yeah, I guess that looks fine. And then the Typhoon's just a little bit more out there with those downward swept canards that kind of like, this looks a little weird sometimes, but other times I'm like, yeah, this looks good. The MiG-31. This, you know what? This might be unpitching. I don't like the MiG-31. I mean, I get that it's just kind of a big box with a big engine, or big engines, that's meant as an interceptor. I just don't really like the design of it. Like, it takes kind of some of the things I dislike about the Tornado and the JH-7 and just makes them much worse here. There's not anything, like, visually interesting for me there. The Viggen. Ooh. I'm going to put the Viggen down at the end of the Delta Wing trio here in the C tier. I don't like this Delta Wing. Yeah, that's kind of where it is. The J-35, which is like a weird knockoff F-22, F-35 hybrid the Chinese kind of are making, but aren't. It's a weird way, like the way their aerospace industries work for their military applications, very strange. Because, you know, it's state controlled to an extent, but it's not like direct. The state doesn't have like direct oversight initially, like in the day-to-day operations, but they do technically have a large stake in those companies, and I think have overall control over them. But they're not there to be like, oh yeah, that design's good, that design's bad. This is from like another company that they're just unrelated to the main design bureau. So it's very strange, but I kind of like it, honestly. I don't know. Where do I put it? Actually, I think I like it more than the F-35, so we'll put it above the F-35. I think that's fine. The Su-35 is going to be... No, actually, I'll put it there. Nope, come on. There we go. It's kind of... It looks very similar to the Su-27. It's kind of like just upgraded on the inside. It's not a very different visual style than the Su-27. The Su-75, I absolutely despise. This thing looks like the X-32 to me, and I just cannot stand that aircraft. It just, like, you want to talk about a big, dumb, mouth-licking intake on the bottom, that's the one, and this is right there alongside it. The Su-30, or to an extent Su-33 as well, because it kind of shares a similar body. I think the canards help it, but that's kind of it. I mean, it still kind of has the same problem here. I think it shortens up the cockpit nose area. The canards, I think, help with that visually speaking, but yeah, it's not blowing me away. The F-14, though, I gotta put the F-14 in S tier. That thing is iconic. I mean, you have, of course, Top Gun, obviously, but the swept wings, the like G.I. Joe ripoff of it, it is cool. It's a cool aircraft. Then there's the regular Super Hornet, and you know, I'm gonna put the regular Super Hornet right behind the Legacy Hornet. I like the Block 3. I think the conformal fuel tanks make sense where they are, but I like it without them. And I like the narrower leading edge on the Legacy Hornet, but the Super Hornet isn't terrible. I do like the design of the aircraft itself, so it's going to go in A tier. But yeah, so let me know, am I dumb for putting the Su-75 down here? Or, you know, is Team F2 out there just irrationally loving this dumb, weird F-16 variant? And let me know if I missed something. I'm sure I did, and I'll try to give you a ranking down below in the comments. But yeah, those have been my opinions, and I'll see you back in some more series slideshow videos.